My dad told me I would never be man enough to head the family business because my loser golden brother is the genuine guy. So, I formed a rival business and beat them. Account that you can throw away for obvious reasons. I've been reading stories like this on Reddit for years, but I never thought I'd have one to share. But I have to get this off my chest since it's been bothering me so much since last month. 34 years old, and this whole thing started when I was a youngster, but it really blew out about 2 years ago. You need to know everything about my family's poisonous dynamics to understand why everything that transpired was so rewarding. Frank, my dad, is 62 years old and a man. He used to own a mid-sized construction company called Morrison & Sons. It began in the 1980s with nothing. It grew to roughly 50 people who did both business and residential work in 3 counties. That company was like a religion to us when we were kids. At every supper, we talked about work, contracts, which crews were doing well, and which suppliers were offering us the best deals. My younger brother Jake and I were going to play the character of Anne's son. 29 men. Dad made that plain as soon as we could walk. He would add, "You boys are going to take over this empire I built one day." Most of the time, we look at blueprints that are laid out on our kitchen table. Your legacy will be Morrison & Sons. But this is where it gets up. Dad thought Jake was the genuine construction worker from the start and that I was just a problem he had to deal with. Jake was one of those kids who seemed to be good at everything physical without even trying. He was a star athlete in high school and could fix engines by the time he was 14. He had a calm confidence that made people want to follow him. Dad ate that up. Check out Jake. He'd tell everybody who would listen how great he was. Kids are born leaders. Made for this job. While you were doing other things, I was paying attention in school, learning about company management, researching how to estimate costs, and being certified in project management software. I worked on my dad's job sites over the summer. But instead of being commended for grasping the technical aspect, I would get told off for not being hands-on enough. When I was 19 and told my dad to put the business on computers, that was the last straw. He was still doing everything on paper in 2009. Estimates, planning, payroll, and inventory. It was a terrible dream. I had found this construction management software that might make everything easier, cut costs, and cut down on mistakes. Dad said, "Son, real construction workers don't need computers. We don't make things by looking at screens all day. We construct things with our hands." Jake, who was 14 at the time and didn't even know how to use a hammer, nodded along as if he knew how to operate a business. "Marcus, building is about getting dirty, not fiddling with technology." That was the main idea of my whole existence. I was told I was overthinking things or making things too complicated every time I sought to bring current business methods to the organization. When I got my business degree, Dad actually said, "College is fine, son, but this is the real world. You can't learn construction from a textbook." Jake, meanwhile, dropped out of community college after 1 semester because school wasn't for him. Dad's reaction: "Good for you, son. Real men learn by doing." I kept working for Dad through college and after graduation, thinking eventually he'd see that I understood the business side better than anyone. I reorganized our filing systems, created proper job costing procedures, even designed a basic database to track equipment maintenance. All without being asked, all on my own time. But every family gathering, every company barbecue, every meeting with suppliers, the story was the same. Jake was the golden boy who really got the construction business. And I was just Marcus, the guy who was good with paperwork. The favoritism was insane. Jake would show up late to job sites, spend half the day on his phone, leave early for whatever party or date he had planned. Dad would just chuckle and say, "Boys will be boys." I'd work 60-hour weeks, solve logistical problems, negotiate better material costs, and get a nod at best. When Jake turned 21, Dad started talking about succession planning. Not to me, mind you. I found out about these conversations from overhearing Mom talking to her sister on the phone. Apparently, Dad was already planning to transition more responsibility to Jake, despite the fact that Jake had never managed anything more complex than a 7-man framing crew. I tried talking to Dad about it directly. This was about 3 years ago when I was 31 and had been working in the business for over a decade. I'd just successfully managed our biggest commercial contract ever, a $2.3 million office complex that came in under budget and ahead of schedule. "Dad," I said after work one day, "I think we should talk about the future of the company. I've got ideas about expansion, maybe getting into some specialty niches. I've been researching." He cut me off. "Marcus, you do good work. Don't get me wrong, but running this company takes a different kind of man than you are." I was stunned. "What do you mean?" "Construction is a tough business. You need someone who can command respect from the crews. Someone who understands what it means to get his hands dirty. Jake's got that natural authority. Men follow him." "Dad, I've been working on sites since I was 16. I know every aspect of this business better than knowing and leading are different things. Son, Jake's got what it takes to be the boss. You're more of a support guy. There's nothing wrong with that. Every good leader needs someone to handle the details." That conversation haunted me for months. Support guy. After everything I'd contributed, all the improvements I'd made, all the money I'd saved the company, I was just the support guy. But the real kick in the teeth came 2 years ago at Dad's 60th birthday party. He'd rented out the back room at this steakhouse, invited the whole extended family, key employees, some of our biggest clients. I thought it was just a birthday celebration. I was wrong. About halfway through dinner, Dad stood up and tapped his glass. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Turning 60 has got me thinking about the future, about legacy, about what kind of company I want to leave behind." My stomach started churning. I could see where this was going. "Morrison & Sons has been my life's work," Dad continued. "But a man's got to know when it's time to pass the torch. That's why I'm proud to announce that Jake Morrison will be taking over as president of Morrison & Sons." Effective immediately, the room erupted in applause. Jake stood up, grinning like he just won the lottery, and hugged Dad. Mom was crying happy tears. I just sat there watching my entire future get handed to my little brother in front of 40 people. Jake gave this speech about carrying on the Morrison legacy and bringing the company into the future with traditional values. It was complete, __. The kid couldn't tell you the difference between gross margin and markup if his life depended on it. But everyone ate it up. After the crowd died down, I cornered Dad in the parking lot. "What the hell was that?" I asked. "You didn't even discuss this with me. I've been working for this company for 15 years. Dad sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Marcus, I told you. Jake's the right man for this job. He's got the personality for it, the leadership skills. Construction crews need someone they respect." "Respect, Dad. Half our guys have been asking me for technical guidance since they started. I'm the one who you're good at the technical stuff. I've never said you weren't, but running a construction company isn't about spreadsheets and computers. It's about being tough, making hard decisions, commanding respect. Jake's got that natural authority." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Natural authority. Jake's never managed a budget over $50,000. He doesn't know our insurance requirements. He's never dealt with permitting issues. He couldn't read a complex blueprint if you gave him a week. Dad's face hardened. "Son, I'm going to say this once. Jake is the future of this company because he's man enough to handle it. Some people are born leaders and some people are born followers. There's no shame in knowing which one you are." That's when he said the words that changed everything. "You've never been man enough to run this business, Marcus. You're too soft, too academic, too worried about everybody's feelings. Jake's got the balls to make the tough calls. That's what it takes." I stood there in that parking lot watching my dad walk away from me like I was just some disappointed employee instead of his son. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. If I wasn't man enough to run Morrison & Sons, I'd show him what kind of man I really was by building something better. The next morning, I walked into Dad's office and quit. "You're making a mistake, son," he said, not even looking up from his paperwork. "Where are you going to go? You've never had a job anywhere else." I just smiled. "You don't have to worry about me, Dad. I'll work it out." What my dad and everyone else in my family didn't know was that I had been silently getting ready for this for months. All the nights I stayed late at work. I had been keeping track of everything. Lists of clients, relationships with suppliers, pricing methods, and ways to complete projects. I had been putting together a full picture of how Morrison & Sons worked, what our strengths were, and, more significantly, what our flaws were. I had also been making connections. Construction is all about relationships, and over the course of 15 years, I had strong ties with subcontractors, suppliers, and even certain clients. People recognized my job, trusted what I said, and respected how much I paid attention to the little things. Dad always thought that Jake's personality, which was always backslapping, was what mattered. But in truth, most of the recurring business we had was from clients who knew I would be in charge of their projects. I had submitted the paperwork to make Pinnacle Construction Solutions a business within a week of resigning. I thought long and hard on the name. Pinnacle suggested that we were the best in terms of quality and expertise. Construction solutions that stressed that we addressed challenges instead of merely using brute force. I began with tiny things. I used my savings to rent a small office in a business park on the other side of town. Got some basic tools. I hired 2 gentlemen I had worked with at Morrison & Sons who were sick of Jake's way of doing things. My first job was a minor home remodel that cost $15,000 and I could mainly do it myself. But I had larger ideas. One of Morrison & Sons' main problems was that they didn't use technology enough. Because Dad wanted them to do everything the old way, they were far less efficient than they could have been. For years, I had watched us lose money on projects because we didn't plan well, didn't keep track of costs, and didn't communicate well between the office and the field crews. I spent a lot of money on software for managing construction projects, tools for tracking projects, and mobile technologies for field teams. Morrison & Sons still used paper timesheets and handwritten change orders. My crew, on the other hand, had tablets that could view designs, provide daily reports, keep track of material use, and talk to the office right away. The improvements in efficiency were amazing. I could bid on jobs more precisely since I had real-time cost information. Better communication mechanisms helped me discover problems before they turned into costly disasters. I could plan better since I knew where my staff were and what they were working on. More importantly, I could show them exactly what they were paying for. Morrison & Sons still supplied general projections based on their experience, but I could give them specific breakdowns of how their money would be spent. My second task was to renovate the kitchen for $40,000 and the bathroom for $75,000. People began to talk about this new construction company that really did finish projects on time and on budget. I also worked on the business market, which my dad had always had trouble with. He was terrific at little commercial contracts and home labor, but he got uneasy when he had to follow rigorous rules or coordinate a lot of things. I made Pinnacle look like the company that could handle the hard stuff, including medical institutions, schools, and anything else that needed specific understanding. 6 months after I started Pinnacle, I got my first significant commercial job, a $400,000 makeover of a medical office building. It was the kind of assignment that Morrison & Sons would have a hard time with. A lot of rules to follow, short deadlines, and no room for mistakes. I did great. I finished 2 weeks early, came in 8% under budget, and the customer was so satisfied that they hired me for their next location right away. I hardly talked to my family throughout this period. Dad would call me from time to time and ask when I was going to come to my senses and come back to work for the family. Jake never called. I assume they're too busy being the CEO. Mom would try to make me feel bad about not coming to family gatherings. She would remark, "Your father misses you." All of this is just pride. You guys should help each other out. But I didn't want to work with them anymore. I wanted to make a point. It took around 18 months after I started Pinnacle for the big break to happen. I had been getting to know general contractors who worked on big commercial projects and making myself known as a dependable subcontractor for specialized work. One of them came to me with a huge project, a $2.8 million refurbishment of a business headquarters in the heart of the city. It was the kind of job Morrison & Sons had always desired but never been able to do. A client who wanted everything to be flawless, complicated mechanical systems, high-end finishes, and an impossible timetable. I spent 3 weeks putting together my bid, which included exact cost estimates, a precise project timeline, thorough quality control systems, and references from every big task I'd done. I knew it was wonderful when I turned it in. I got the job. I beat Morrison & Sons' offer by $200,000 and promised to finish the job faster, which is more crucial. Later, the general contractor informed me that Morrison & Sons' proposal seemed like it was written by a beginner compared to mine. He stated your paperwork was amazing. Their offer was just a number on a napkin and a handshake. That's when I realized I had Dad just where I wanted him. The project for the downtown headquarters made me famous. Not only did I finish everything perfectly, but I also completed it ahead of schedule and under budget. The client was so happy that they hired me for 2 more jobs. The general contractor began sending me work for other big projects. Pinnacle Construction Solutions had 15 employees and $8 million in contracted work within 6 months of finishing the assignment. At the same time, Morrison & Sons were having a hard time. I wasn't directly in competition with them. They couldn't manage the bigger, more complicated jobs I was going after anyway. But my achievement was starting to hurt their reputation. Potential clients would say things like, "We heard about this new company, Pinnacle Construction Solutions. They did that amazing headquarters renovation downtown. We're thinking of going with them instead." Contractors who used to subcontract with Morrison & Sons started choosing my company for specialized work. Suppliers began offering me better terms because my payment schedule was more reliable and my volume was growing faster. But the real blow came when I started targeting Morrison & Sons' core clients directly. I'd spent 15 years building relationships with their customers. I knew exactly what they valued, what frustrated them about working with Morrison & Sons, and what they'd pay extra for. I crafted proposals that addressed every one of those pain points. Thompson Industries had been working with Morrison & Sons for 8 years. They did about $300,000 worth of facility maintenance and renovation work annually, bread and butter business that Dad counted on. I scheduled a meeting with their facilities manager, someone I'd worked with dozens of times when I was at Morrison & Sons. "Marcus," he said when I walked into his office, "I heard you started your own company. How's that going?" "Really well," I said. "Actually, that's why I'm here. I know you've been happy with Morrison & Sons, but I wanted to show you what we could do differently." I presented a comprehensive facility management proposal that was unlike anything Morrison & Sons had ever offered. Instead of just responding to problems as they came up, I proposed a proactive maintenance system with predictive scheduling, detailed reporting, and guaranteed response times. More importantly, I offered to do it for 15% less than what they were currently paying Morrison & Sons while providing better service. "This is impressive," the facilities manager said, flipping through my presentation. "Morrison & Sons never offered anything like this level of documentation and planning." "We're not Morrison & Sons," I replied. "We're focused on solving problems, not just throwing labor at them." 2 weeks later, Thompson Industries led their contract with Morrison & Sons and signed with Pinnacle. That was just the beginning. Over the next 8 months, I systematically went after every major Morrison & Sons client. I didn't compete on price alone. I competed on value, offering services that Morrison & Sons couldn't or wouldn't provide. Advanced project management software that let clients track progress in real time. Detailed cost reporting that showed exactly how their money was being spent. Guaranteed completion dates with penalty clauses if we ran late. Quality assurance procedures that prevented the kind of costly mistakes that had plagued some of Morrison & Sons' recent projects. One by one, Morrison & Sons' biggest clients switched to Pinnacle Construction Solutions. Riverside Manufacturing, $500,000 annually, gone. Central Medical Group, $400,000 annually, gone. Brookstone Property Management, $600,000 annually, gone. Each time a client switched, I made sure to send a polite thank you note to Dad, letting him know I'd be taking excellent care of our mutual associates. The calls from Mom started getting more frequent. "Your father is worried about the business," she'd say. "Some of his oldest clients have left. He thinks there might be someone spreading rumors about the company. I never told him it was me. I figured he'd figure it out eventually. He did. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was in my office, a real office now. 3,000 square feet with a conference room and space for 20 employees. When my receptionist buzzed me, "Marcus, there's a Frank Morrison here to see you. He says he's your father." I smiled. "Send him back." Dad walked into my office looking like he'd aged 5 years in the two since I'd left Morrison and Sons. His face was red, his hands were shaking slightly, and he had that look he used to get when a job went seriously wrong. "You son of a bitch," he said before he was even fully through the door. "Nice to see you, too, Dad. Please take a seat." He didn't take a seat. He stood in front of my desk and looked around my office like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Central Medical, Riverside Manufacturing, and Thompson Industries. "You've been taking my clients." I responded quietly, "I haven't stolen anyone. I've been giving better service at pricing that are hard to beat. That's what I call business. Work? This is an act of sabotage. You're trying to tear down everything I've worked for." I leaned back in my chair and looked at him. "Dad, I'm not attempting to break anything. I'm merely demonstrating the market how actual construction management works." His face became redder. "Is this real construction management? Do you think you know something about building that I don't? You don't know as much about building as I do. I know how to use technology to make things work better. I know how to give clients clear and detailed reports. I always know how to finish assignments on time and within budget. And I guess Jake doesn't know any of it." I grinned. "By the way, how is Jake doing? I heard that Morrison and Sons lost the contract to make things in Riverside. That must hurt." Dad's jaw tightened. "We're doing well. Are you? I heard that you've lost roughly $2 million in yearly sales in the last 8 months. That has to be placing some stress on the cash flow." I understood exactly how Morrison and Sons was doing with their money. There aren't many construction companies in our neighborhood, so news spreads fast. Dad was having trouble making payroll, had fired 6 workers, and was overdue on payments to a number of suppliers. "You planned this," Dad replied, his voice suddenly calmer. "You want to destroy my company with this whole thing." "I want to build a better company," I said. "If that puts pressure on Morrison and Sons, then that's the free market at work." Dad sat down in the chair across from my workstation. He seemed defeated instead of angry for the first time since he walked in. "Why?" he inquired. "I hired you, trained you the business, and treated you like family. You treated me like family." I laughed. "You said I wasn't man enough to run the business, Dad. You gave Jake everything without even thinking about what I had done. You made it apparent that you thought I'd never be anything more than a support guy. I was trying to be honest about what you are good at and what you need to work on." I responded no and got up to walk around my desk. "You were picking favorites, like you always do. You thought Jake was the perfect kid and I was the son who let you down because I didn't live up to your concept of what a man should be." I waved my hands around my workspace. "Well, this is what your son made since he wasn't man enough. Last year, Pinnacle Construction Solutions made $12 million. We're on target to make $18 million this year. We hired 28 workers, and every one of them makes more money than they would at Morrison and Sons." Dad looked at me like he had never seen me before. "How?" He wanted to know. "By doing everything you said was impossible. By using technology instead of resisting it. By being open with our clients instead of asking them to believe us without question. Instead of treating our workers like laborers who should be thankful for what we offer them, we should treat them like experts." I sat back down. "Dad, do you know what's funny? I learned all of this while working with you. I was paying attention to every mistake Morrison and his sons made, every time they were inefficient, and every time a client complained. I was learning what not to do. For a long time, Dad didn't say anything. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to admit you were wrong. I want you to admit that I was man enough to run the family business and that your precious golden boy Jake isn't. By the way, how is Jake doing as president? Is he getting all the respect you were so anxious about?" I knew everything I needed to know from Dad's quiet. I kept going, let me guess. Half of the crew believes he's a fool. The other half doesn't appreciate him since they know he only got the position because he is your son. Because he doesn't comprehend the numbers, suppliers don't trust him to make decisions. Customers are angry because he promises too much and doesn't deliver. Dad mentioned every week that it had been an adjustment phase. Dad, it's time to adjust. It's been 2 years. By now, Jake should have figured it out. I opened my laptop and pointed it at him. Do you want to see something cool? I had my accountant do a financial analysis comparing Morrison and Son's success over the past 2 years to their performance over the 2 years before that. The spreadsheet has all the information. 35% drop in sales. Profit margins went down from 12% to 3%. The rate of keeping clients fell from 85% to 60%. The average time it took to finish a job went up by 20%. Dad, these stats aren't just poor. They're awful. Jake isn't simply not making the business grow. He is intentionally ruining it. Dad looked at the screen like it was showing him his own death certificate. In the meantime, I kept on and opened another spreadsheet. This is what Pinnacle's numbers look like. Year-over-year revenue growth of 400%. 18% profit margins. 95% of clients stay with us. The average time to finish a project is 15% faster than the industry standard. Dad, I'm not merely a man who can operate a construction firm. I'm better at it than you ever were. That did him in. Dad put his hands on his head and began to cry. I had never seen him cry before, not even when his dad died. He said in a low voice, I'm sorry. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about everything. I felt both happy and sad as I saw him break down. This was what I had hoped for. Recognition, proof that I was right all along, and vindication. But it didn't feel as nice to see my dad cry in my office as I imagined it would. Dad, it's too late to say you're sorry. The harm is done. He glanced up at me with tears in his eyes. What should I do? What can I do to solve this? No, you can't. Morrison and Sons is done. If you dismissed Jake tomorrow and asked your previous clientele to come back, they still wouldn't trust you. You had your chance to do things the correct way. And you chose favoritism above skill. Dad wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. What will happen to the business? To Jake? I really don't care what happens to Jake. He made his bed when he agreed to help you get rid of me. I think you'll have to sell off any assets you have and pay off your debts. If you're lucky, you might not have to file for bankruptcy. So, what's next? Marcus, I'm 62 years old. I just know this business. I thought about giving him a job for a second. He was nonetheless a terrific boss on the construction site, even though he was a bad businessman. But then I remembered all the times people told me I wasn't man enough. People praised Jake a lot, but no one paid attention to what I had to say. All the pain and rage that had brought me to this point. I told you, I think you'll find it out. You are a brilliant person. You'll get used to it. Dad got up slowly, as if he was in pain. I think I deserve this. Yes, I said. But I didn't do this to hurt you, just so you know. I did it to show you were wrong. He nodded and then went to the door. Then he stopped and went back. For what it's worth, kid. What you've made here makes me proud. I should have noticed it sooner. Yes, I said. You should have. I stayed in my office for a long time after he departed, thinking about everything that had transpired. I had obtained exactly what I desired. Proof that I was better than Jake, Dad admitting he was incorrect, and the pleasure of seeing Morrison and Sons fail. But I also felt empty, like I had won a war that didn't matter anymore. That was 3 months ago. Last month, Morrison and Sons went bankrupt. Dad had to sell the company's assets to pay off debts. Jake is now working for one of our competitors and making roughly half as much as he used to. He could even be getting the recognition he deserves. Dad calls me sometimes to see if there are any jobs open at Pinnacle. I haven't employed him yet, but I'm thinking about it. He is an excellent boss when he doesn't try to play favorites, and we are developing quickly enough that we need people with expertise. Jake called me last week, which is funny. It was the first time we'd talked since I left Morrison and Sons. He told Marcus, "I want to say I'm sorry. I should have defended you to Dad. I knew you were better at the business side than I was, but I was selfish and let him pick favorites. You believe it's too late for that?" "Yeah, most likely. But I wanted you to know that you were right. I wasn't prepared to run the business. I don't know if I'll ever be ready to run a business." "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know. You might go back to school and try to learn some of the things you tried to teach me. Maybe you may think about hiring me at Pinnacle." I laughed. "Do you want to work for me?" "I want to know how to do things correctly. You are the only person I know who really knows how to operate a business in construction." I still don't know what to say to him. One part of me feels it would be good for my golden boy brother to work for me and learn some humility, but another part of me thinks it's best to let the past stay in the past. At the moment, my main goal is to build Pinnacle Construction Solutions. Next month, we're going to bid on a $15 million project to fix up a hospital. The type of project that Morrison and Sons would never have been able to do, and the kind of challenge that gets me happy to get up in the morning. Mom still asks me to supper with the family. But things are very different now. People don't ask me about Jake's latest accomplishments. They ask me about my firm, my plans for growth, and what I think about the construction industry. After being the disappointment for so long, it's strange to be the successful son, but I'll take it. The craziest aspect is that my dad's colleagues and business partners now call me the one who really knows how to build things. Like they always knew I was the smart one and not the person who wasn't tough enough to operate a construction company. I think the lesson is that you sometimes have to destroy everything to show that you were right all along. It may not be the most grown-up thing to do, but it feels good. Update: 3 weeks ago, Dad began working for me as a project manager. On his first day on the job, he grabbed me aside and said, "I want you to know that you're the boss here. Don't treat me differently just because I'm your father. If I mess up, fire me." So far, he's been fantastic. It turns out that when he isn't attempting to pick favorites among his sons, he is a good manager. I didn't know. Jake is still deciding if he wants to work with Pinnacle. I told him that if he really wants to do it, he needs to start at the bottom. Labora in general. If he does well, he might be able to become crew chief. This time, no shortcuts. We'll see if he has the guts to put aside his pride and do the